Welcome to the FAM Podcast, everyone, the series where we interview the artists and creators shaping the cultural landscape in New York City today. I'm so thrilled to welcome my friend Pedram, a composer, producer, and multi-instrumentalist whose work bridges classical training with contemporary electronic music. Starting as a teenager, composing classical pieces for piano and chamber orchestra, Pedram is now reimagining that harmonic vocabulary through modern rhythms and production. He's also one half of STELLA, a dynamic jazz house duo with Meg Brennan that's been captivating audiences at venues like Public Records, Heaven Can Wait, and Harbor NYC Rooftop with their unique live setup, looping and mixing saxophones, flute, guitar, and keys to create an atmosphere that bridges classic jazz and contemporary dance. Please welcome Pedram. How's it going, man?
Amazing. Yeah, after that intro, I'm like, wow, is that me?
I want to get into STELLA and how y'all met, but really want to start first at the beginning and how you got into music. I know you began composing music as a teenager, composing classical music specifically, piano solos, even chamber orchestra pieces. What drew you to composition at such a young age? How did you even get into it? And do you remember the first piece that you wrote?
Yeah, I started playing piano when I was 4 years old, so it wasn't my choice. I just got into it. My aunt had a piano at her house, and we would go over there and people would, mingle and socialize, and I would just run away to the piano and stay in that room for hours. And I started writing music kind of unofficially when I was, I think, 8 or 9. It was the first time I wrote on pen and paper a bunch of notes that come out of my brain. And then the first time that I wrote something that got played by other people was when I was in middle school. We had just moved to the US, and I had trouble learning English or speaking English. I was learning it, but I was very, very shy. And so I think I spent more time writing music and living in my sheet music than I did, socializing and trying to make friends. And so it became kind of an escape. I remember, when we moved to the US, this was in kind of the post 9/11 era, and I was from a Middle Eastern country, from Iran, and moved to the south of the US. And so I do remember it being very much of an escape, where I could either face very kind of tough conversations with kids who were not necessarily the nicest, or just get lost in the music and write and read and listen and play. And time after time, I chose the latter.
It's really interesting to hear you moved to the US. Your parents made the decision to move from Iran to the US when you were really young. Mm. I'm curious, how did that transition shape your process today, your musical process?
I think it was critical, because I think if I had a quote unquote more normal upbringing, and I didn't have that couple of years where I felt kind of detached from the universe. I felt like I didn't really belong. I felt like I didn't really have friends. I felt like in reality I didn't have any friends. I don't know if I would have sunk so much of myself, so much of my time and identity into music. And I think those years were critical in my development as a pianist, as a composer, as an artist that has kind of a unique vantage point on life. So I can't imagine what life would have been like if that hadn't happened.
And that's awesome. Yeah, you started early on as a classical musician and composer, but then started picking up jazz, and then later on electronic music. How did those other influences come into the fold?
It certainly wasn't well thought out or strategic. It certainly all kind of just happened. I do remember growing up and listening to a lot of classical music. I think there's this sense of elitism that exists and is kind of imbued inside classical music, that all other genres are less than. And I very much had that. I think even as a teenager, it's hard to feel like you were elitist, but I definitely was. I did listen to other genres of music. I'm like, this is not real music. There's no complexity here. There's no technique here. There's no And I remember there were a couple of jazz records that I listened to when I was a teenager, and those were the first times where I was like, oh, this person could not have played this if they weren't first and foremost an excellent pianist. And so it's like they first accomplished everything that I thought was was worthy of celebrating, and then they went and did their own thing and completely kind of went rogue from the standpoint of classical piano. And so I think that set off a light bulb in my head that it's a lot of these genres are made by people who have perfected their craft in some classical discipline or in some thing that I, at the time would have respected, and then said, okay, that's not enough. There are too many rules here. I want to more freely express myself. And that's why they went and created a different genre. And I think that, I don't know how true that necessarily is, but I think that was the path that I took that let me kind of come out of my elitist shell and be like, no, there's a lot to appreciate about these other genres. And I think all you need is a gateway. As soon as you have a gateway of appreciation, there's more than enough beauty in any of these genres to find what you want to find in it.
What was the gateway for you?
I think it's very prosaic gateway, but Take Five was it was one of those songs that I listened to and I was like, what? How can you be so good? How can you be so good and non-standard? And how can you break so many rules and still be so technically excellent? That I remember that really made a big impression on me. And then I started a completely so that was going on. Like I said, it was not coherent or strategic. So that arc was happening, and then a totally thing in parallel that was happening was I had finally learned enough English that I could speak to people and like make friends. And my friends were all like singing R&B and rapping, and they could not make beats for the life of them. So I was like, this is not hard. I can do this. And so I started making beats for my friends who wanted to rap over them or sing over them. And then that's how I kind of learned production. And then I started to kind of fuse things that I knew. So I started to, because prior to that, I would only write music in like Finale or like a scoring software. And I was like, why don't I try to compose inside a digital audio workstation where, it's not meant for creating orchestral pieces that other people are going to play. It's just meant for putting music that other people can listen to. And I think that was a very different kind of a change in how I approached composition. As I stopped writing for other people to play it, so in scoring software, and I started writing in DAWs, where it's just like the audio, the sound is the thing that you get out of it, and it's just for people to listen to it, not necessarily read it and look at it and then try to kind of replicate it. So those are the two arcs that happened kind of around the same time, and then it led me to this world.
Yeah, it's so interesting because it's like scoring music gave you this melodic sensibility, but it's really the production with producing for rappers, hip hop, etc., that gave you more of a rhythmic sensibility. And now with STELLA, just to bring it back to the project that you're working on now, STELLA sort of combines both of these seemingly disparate worlds of your background. Real quick, before we get into the sound of STELLA, how did you and Meg meet? How did STELLA as a project come about?
Oh, I love it because it's like such a New York story. So we were both basically doing what STELLA is independently for, I would say, a year before we have even met.
And so how would you describe what STELLA is?
It's taking language from classical and jazz disciplines and putting them in a more modern and electronic context and soundscape. So the language and vocabulary is very old. The rhythms, the instrumentation, the sound design, all of that is very modern. So we were basically doing that independently And then we, through a music collective called Coastal Jams, the founder kind of like met us independently and was like, you guys need to meet. And we met and we did a session together, and we're like, this is insane. Like, we're doing the same exact thing very differently and in different ways. And honestly, to most people, if they listen to our sound back then, they're like, these two are very different things, but we laid out our visions and it was very much the same. And so, even then, it took us, I would say, 4, 5, 6 months of playing a lot together, writing together, playing a bunch of gigs together. And then at the end of last year is when you were like, this is like, there was a moment when we were at playing for a Versi show at Public Records, and we switched from playing a jazz standard, Stella by Starlight, which is where Stella comes from, to a 125 BPM house track like that, and people were vibing. And I think that was the moment I remember looking at each other like while we're playing, and we're like, this is real. There's something here. We need to, like, there's an opportunity here. We really need to seize it. So I think that's kind of the genesis of, like, we were both trying to do it with very limited skill sets. I think both of us recognize that there's things that we can't do. There's things that are needed for the project to succeed that we individually can't do. And when we're in together, I couldn't have written a better match. If you gave me a magic wand, I'm like, what would be a better match in terms of preferences, in terms of work styles, in terms of skill sets? It just worked.
That's beautiful. And I love how so much of it is really this reaction, is this authentic reaction to what the audience was telling you, right? And I love the idea of leveraging the vocabulary of classical music and jazz, but dressing it up in a much more modern aesthetic. That's such a beautiful way and crisp way to delineate exactly what the sound of Stella is. I'm curious, now that you have this project that's merging all these different worlds, how do you think about your creative process now? It used to be that you compose music you compose scores, then you learn the music production. With Stella, there seems to be an element of improvisation to it that's really fascinating. And I know in the past you've written about like building your home studio and the importance of being able to capture everything that you're improvising. Can you tell us a little bit about your process now and how you're merging all these different influences, these two seemingly disparate worlds, into this cohesive aesthetic?
That's such a good question, because it kind of gets to the heart of one of the most important facets of Stella, which is that we believe that, like, music is a thing to be experienced. Music is a thing that you need to be there for. You can't just, it's a very different feeling when someone is in a studio, they record something and they distribute it and you hear it, you're sitting in your room or you're in a car. Like, that is a very different and a valid experience. But what we want to bring with Stella, and what has made the project a lot more difficult, to be quite honest, to work out, is we want everything that we do for us to be able to do it live. So that when you listen to a song and you fall in love with a song, get a recording of a song, and then you come to our show and we play it, it sounds exactly the same. And so we have a huge focus on how do we make it that all of our sessions, for example, we do a ton of improvisation and it's all recorded. Like, I've spent a great deal of time to make sure the way that we mic ourselves, the way that we are capturing everything, from random things that we're saying to each other to little flares and little licks that we would play, all of it is recorded and is usable audio. And there have been times, for example, on one of our records, a lot of them are very emotional, and like we wrote them and we were in a very emotionally charged state. And you can, if you really pay attention, you can hear Meg kind of cry through, like, while she's playing her flute. And it's a beautiful take. And I remember her being like, let's try to get a take when I'm not crying. And we cried for days and we just couldn't. And we ended up using that take because like, yeah, the audio quality isn't as good as we could have done like in a clean take, but the emotion that is captured in that recording, we tried to replicate it, we just couldn't. And so I think there is, yeah, we are huge proponents of capturing the emotionality and kind of feelings that come about when musicians, honestly, any creatives are in their state of flow and doing their thing. Like we are, yeah, huge proponents of capturing that and making that kind of a centerpiece of the art itself.
It's so funny how much time we waste trying to get something perfect when sometimes it's the imperfect take that is the perfect take.
Yeah. That's what people relate to. That's what resonates with people. Yeah. Perfection is nice to look at, but imperfect things are what really kind of resonate with people.
It's what makes you feel.
Yeah.
You know, what's interesting is you talk a lot about your experience prior to this group as a solo artist, and now you're in a duo. How does working with another person change your process, and how do you think about the differences between writing music by yourself versus writing music with Meg?
So I would say I've worked with a lot of people. I've worked, yeah, with probably like upwards of 100 musicians who've been all extremely talented, extremely good at what they do. And I, for years, preferred working alone. I think, yeah, the creative relationship that we have together, Meg and I, and with this project, in the context of this project, I think I would not trade for the world. Like, I think it is something, yeah, that it's just something beyond my wildest imagination. It's not just the skill sets coming together and she's good at this instrument or this subgenre of jazz and I'm not. It's like we are constantly pushing each other to think of ideas and then execute on those ideas that are, like 2 months ago, we would have thought that is crazy. There's a lot that you can do on your own, especially if you're, skilled in multiple arenas. There's a lot that you can do on your own, but just having one other person, one other soul that can take an idea and kind of creatively spin their wheels on it and then come out with something that then inspires you and then you do the same thing. I think having this back and forth is, with the right person, is priceless. So yeah, I still sometimes miss writing alone, but yeah, this is a completely different ballgame.
That's awesome, man. So what's next for Stella? Both from shows that you're playing, music that you're releasing, in addition to sounds that you're exploring.
I don't know, because so we had a plan. We were gonna kind of focus on making music this year, and then focus and then kind of build a sound, build a palette, and kind of an identity that we can kind of proudly stand behind. And then next year was going to be about kind of trying to grow it and trying to reach as many ears as we can, make a lot of content around it and kind of build our social presence. And it's been crazy seeing the project take off, kind of with us not kind of making a concerted effort to grow it. So that plan is dead. I don't know what we're going to do next year. I think so we're going to put out an album at the end of this year of all the work that we've done this year. And then I think what we will likely do, what has been feeling really good the past few months, is trying to think more about the philosophy and the ideas that we are putting into our music and more explicitly be able to talk about them, especially because we are making instrumental music. There is no lyrics. So I think a lot of the ideas and feelings and emotions and insights that I think drive us to write certain songs get lost in translation. And so one thing we're thinking more about is like, how do we bring that more to the forefront of the project and communicate it more explicitly? But other than that, I think, yeah, there's a lot more beautiful music that we can make. There's a lot more better that we can get at our craft, various crafts. Yeah, lots of practice, lots of shows, hopefully releasing some music, and hopefully, yeah, putting the kind of the philosophy and the way that we think more in the forefront.
That's awesome, man. Before we wrap up, if you could go back and give advice to your teenage self as a young, aspiring composer and producer, what would you give that person? What advice would you generally just give up and coming producers, composers, musicians?
I think I spent so many years trying to, I would have ideas in my head and I would try to find the right team and the right people and the right way of doing it. And I think what I would tell that person is to just figure out how to do it yourself. And then once the idea gets materialized somehow, once you can point to it, then try to go find people that you resonate with, that idea, that can help you take it to the next level. Always try to do the first version yourself. Like whatever vision you have, get some very basic version of it out in the world yourself with what you have. Don't go buy gear. Don't go rent crazy expensive studios. With whatever means you have, make it into a reality, a really crappy reality. Yeah, the first version of all my projects were terrible. But then that does two things. One is it lets you clearly communicate to other people that you're serious about it. And also that's your vision. It's not just an idea. It's a thing that they can look at and touch and feel. And two, it lets you be able to wait for the right collaborator and the right partner. Like if you are critically dependent on other people to get the first version out, you will just say yes to whoever comes along. Whereas if you have started this journey yourself and you're getting better and better, you have the privilege of waiting a little bit and waiting for the right person to come along to bring them on as a collaborator, I think. But I think, yeah, starting yourself with the means that you have and not having the right gear or the right venue or the right skill set or the right anything keep you from doing the first version. I think that will take you a long, long way.
Yeah, and let's contextualize a follow-up to that, which is in today's context with AI specifically, how does that change the advice to a person coming up as a musician, as a teenager today, getting into music, especially with all of these new tools for music composition? I mean, I think what we're seeing is the distance between idea and reality is shortening as people are able to better, communicate and express different ideas without necessarily having to master an instrument, for example.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't thought about this, and I think it's a nuanced topic, so I'm hesitant to say things about a nuanced topic that I haven't thought critically about. But what feels right is that I think outright rejection of them on some principled basis probably isn't the right approach. Like I have friends who work as like makeup artists, and they're like, I love this thing. I love Midjourney because now all of a sudden I can when the client tells me they want this, I will generate like 10 different versions. I'll say, which one is it exactly that you want? And I'll use that one, and I know exactly what the reference is. Whereas it would have taken me like hours to go find what they were potentially looking for, and I still couldn't give them as varied of a. So I think there is. I'm hesitant to just outright say, yeah, 100% you should do it, because I think there's a lot of joy that comes from doing the thing itself. That I think people are rightfully a little bit worried about when AI is used for outright creation of the thing, because you're circumventing the thing that, at least in the previous generation, gave people a lot of joy. But that's just technology. Like a lot of things that give you joy get automated or made a lot easier. So now the next generation of creators isn't going to get joy from the specific technical things. They're going to get joy from some other thing. So I don't know. There's a reason this is a word vomit, because I don't have a clear answer. What I would say is, I think directionally you should try to chase the ideas that you have and try to bring them into reality with the means that you have. And I think as long as you're somewhat careful about not being distasteful and not, as long as you have a clear kind of moral compass and kind of a way of thinking about your usage of AI that you can stand behind, I think you should do it. I don't think there's, I think there's a ton of really, really good usage of AI in creative spaces that are not, that people are not using as much as they could be.
Yeah, and ultimately to your earlier point, it's being scrappy, doing what you can to get your ideas out. Whereas before you would have to bring on a team to record a band. With modern technology, first it was, the DAW where you could just record yourself playing everything, right? Now it's AI where you can just prompt an idea and capture your idea. But yeah, whatever it takes to get it out there. Love it. Thank you so much for your time, man. This has been great.